tend to believe that capital, just like water flows downhill, capital tends to flow to where it's best rewarded. And so if China is going to decide, you know what, we're not going to follow the West's lead, we're going to reward capital, then we shouldn't be surprised that so much of the world's capital is now flowing out east. So what we're really witnessing today is almost a reverse Asian crisis. You know, I started my career in Asia just before the Asian crisis. And, you know, the Asian crisis, for all intents and purposes, was a massive transfer of purchasing power from the Asian consumer to the Western consumer. All of a sudden, the German tourist could go very cheaply on holiday in Phuket. The American consumer could buy very cheap Korean-made televisions, so on and so forth. It was a massive transfer of purchasing power. Capital flowed from east to west, and purchasing power flowed from east to west. Well, today, the COVID crisis is the reverse of that. It's a reverse Asian crisis, where Asian currencies are being re-rated, and purchasing power is moving from the west back to the east, and capital is moving from the west back to the east, begging the question of how will China recycle these large capital inflows. Now, the first thing it is trying to do is perhaps, you know, slow down these capital inflows. And I think that's been one of the drivers for the crackdown on the internet sector in China, because that was one of the sectors that foreigners were throwing money at. But apart from that, you know, how will China recycle its large currency inflows? Well, it could buy US treasuries, which is what it's done in the past. However, given the geopolitical situation, that seems quite unlikely. It could turn around and buy commodities, and in fact, it is doing just that, buying iron ore, buying copper, buying oil, etc. It can allow the renminbi to appreciate, which is what is happening. It can buy foreign assets, and if it does, it's more likely to buy these foreign assets into emerging markets. Perhaps it could buy gold. But when you look at the policy grid, what are you left with? In the Western world, you have very easy money. In China and in most of Asia, you have, in essence, the beginning of a tightening of monetary policy. If you look at the fiscal front, the Western world, very easy. Again, across the East, in China especially, but elsewhere as well, the beginning of a tightening of fiscal policy. The end result should be steeper yield curve in the West, flattening or inverted yield curves in the East. Weak currencies in the West, strong currencies in the East. Acceleration in the West, and accelerating inflation in the West, and inflation remaining in check thanks mostly to a stronger